My name's Mel, I'm Head of Performance at Maxwell Bond. My background is neuroscience, behavioural science, and I am chartered within organisational design and development. And what that basically means is creating environments that make it easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing, and closing skills gaps, confidence gaps, and motivation gaps. Rightly so, in the last couple of years, diversity and inclusion has had a bigger part of that conversation. There are lots of people who are very passionate about diversity and inclusion and the change that needs to happen. There are lots of people who are terrified of going anywhere near the topic for fear of getting it wrong, offending people, being called woke, or it being tokenistic. So a big part of what I hope to do, not just here but everywhere I go, is create an environment that makes it safe to have discussions around this topic, because change doesn't happen without us actually engaging with it. We would love you to be part of these discussions tonight, so you will notice bits of paper on your seats and QR codes on the screens. So this will get you onto our Slido. So if a question or comment pops into your head tonight during our discussion, we invite you to put your question into the Slido. There is an option to upvote questions that have already been asked, and the most popular questions get shifted to the top of the pile. So if you've got a question, it's worth checking whether it's already in there, and you can upvote it. If not, then put your question in, and we will do our best during the Q&A section of the event tonight to get those questions answered. So before we launch into my questions and yours, let's find out a little bit more about our panel by way of some quick introductions.
Thank you. Is it on?
Is this thing on?
It's on, you're good.
Yeah, I'm going to follow that with the microphone's not even on. I'm doing well so far. Evening everyone, I'm Jayne Bird. I'm a HR business partner working for NCC Group. So I look after the assurance division, which is the biggest division in the business globally. So I started there about 2.5 years ago, and one of the things that attracted me to NCC Group was the diversity and inclusion steering groups that they had globally, and one of those was a neurodiversity steering group. So we have, in my family, my cousin's 2 little kids are both autistic, but in very different ways. So I kind of jumped at the chance to be part of that neurodiversity steering group when I joined, in the thought being that even if I can make a small difference to the world of work for when they get a bit bigger, hopefully things are a bit more inclusive and understanding, and the world of work will look and feel quite different by the time they get into it. So that's my kind of background in this subject, I guess, and interest in it as well. So yeah, so that's me. I'll hand over to Andy now.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Andy Lovatt. I'm Chief Executive of a charity called Digital Advantage. We work with neurodiverse teenagers mostly, right across the northwest. And some of them we work with for up to 3, 4, 5 years. We ease them into tech jobs. Bit of background. I'm also the father of an autistic son, Joe. He also has ADHD. I got my ADHD diagnosis while sitting next to him while he was having his ADHD diagnosis. And I was just making notes actually about my kind of career, and it's kind of like that, which kind of probably, now you know you've got ADHD, probably explains a lot, but didn't really fit in at school, left at 16, was an electronic engineer, didn't like that, left, worked at City Life magazine in Manchester in the 80s, didn't like that, left. Went to university in my 20s down in London, did something very interesting, politics, history and economics, but particularly useless when it came to getting a career. So went on then, obviously to do a PhD at the Manchester Institute of Popular Culture, which was in 24-hour cities, which was obviously very interesting, but remains unfinished. I worked then at the Northwest Development Agency as Creative and Digital, with my job was primarily to get the BBC up to Manchester but obviously I left before they came. So eventually I set up my own business, and that was about 10 years ago. It's the only thing I haven't left after 2 or 3 years. And starting out in digital creative training with neurotypical people, doing a thing, until we took it to neurodiverse people. And whilst making a kind of incremental change to the neurotypical people, we realised we were having a significant impact on the neurodiverse people that we were working with, and literally changing lives. So we rapidly kind of pivoted. We set up a charity. We now work with about 250, 300 people a year in an outreach where we go into their school for a week and we do digital stuff with them. We also work with the kids that are not really fitting in at school through alternative provisions, so about 20 or 30 of those come to our city centre studio and make stuff, digital. And in September we opened a college, which is called DISC, Digital Independent Specialist College, where we run a student, something called a supported internship. And that gives us a chance to work with 15 young people, most of whom have got autism. But we work with them for a year in a kind of digital studio environment. And we help them hone their skills, discover their skills and make them better. And then we ease them over into digital jobs. We did a pilot last year and we got 14 out of 15 of them into digital jobs. So it's by far the most rewarding and most important work I've ever done, and I'm sure that it will see me through to retirement.
So my name is Rob Di Schiavi. I'm the head of cybersecurity for Parliamentary Health Service Ombudsman, and I'm on the spectrum.
Thank you very much to our panel. So I'm going to get started with the first question of the evening. What does neurodiversity mean to you, and why do you think it's an important topic for us to be discussing in workplaces?
Who's going to go first? Thanks, Rob. Give you time to think of something. Start with the big questions first. God, I mean, neurodiverse is somebody that's not neurotypical. In the past, they'd probably just been called different or weird, not normal. Even within the space that we work in, which is young people primarily with autism, there are no two autistic people the same. So whilst there is a bracket or a spectrum to fit into, you know, it's very clearly defined that you have to spend time trying to understand that person, their needs, their strengths, their challenges, and their personalities. So that takes time. So in a sense, it's kind of, I think it's an impossible question to answer. In our space, you know, we see young people with challenges, young people with incredible talent, and young people that deserve a little bit of time and a kind of new way of encouraging their talents to come out and encouraging them as human beings to find a place that they deserve.
Okay, no, cheers, Andy. So I guess my perspective on it would be neurodiversity is it's in terms of what it means to business and that kind of thing. Mel, it's the way I look at it, the way NCC looks at it, is that it's actually massively valuable. It's a different perspective. It's a different way of looking at things. You know, and that can take lots of different forms. So, you know, especially the type of work that we do in NCC Group. I mean, there's loads of different services, but I'll pick on one. You know, for the you know, lots of ethical hackers we have in our business, for instance. That, you know, having that different perspective and different ways that you might go about hacking into whatever it is that they are ethically hacking. It's a, you know, that's so important and so valuable. So it's, for us, it's the different perspectives on how you might approach a particular problem. And we set, like our CPO, Michelle, she talks regularly about neurodiversity being the jewel in our crown, and one of the big reasons that we are as successful as we are, because we amongst our colleagues there's a really high number of neurodivergent individuals who all bring different things and different perspectives to whatever their role is. So it's really valuable, we think, and we're spending the time to set people up for success with whatever that looks like, whatever is needed for colleagues to be their best at work. Yeah. So, over to you, Rob. Thank you.
So I've never really openly discussed this before. I suppose. I mean, I'm not shy in telling people that I do have autism, because obviously what that leads to is confrontation. Specifically being in cybersecurity, because it is obviously an adversarial sort of landscape. But let me have a go. So as a child, everything was very confusing. I was thrown into a school. Incidentally, the diagnosis for autism didn't come out until 1994 with Laura Wing. By that time, I was already serving in the military. So before that was just sort of randomness and confusion. So at the age of 4, they threw me into a school with a whole bunch of other people, which I had no use for whatsoever. I managed to make a couple of friends, but they were friends that only had sort of my interests. I was non-verbal until I was 10. Which was obviously through choice. And I spent most of my time on a Commodore 64, 8-bit from the age of 7, hacking into various elements of the alphabet agencies in America and just basically anything I could hack into, basically, because of the process of just wanting to break something. Aspies tend to like to break things in order to fix them, or to understand them. So they need to get right to the root of the problem, as opposed to reading a book about it, or assuming that somebody else would know something about that. Post that, I joined the military and had all of that confusion left me because of obviously the protocols and procedures which are laid down by manual military law, standard operating procedures for how you fire your weapon, how you clean your weapon. Everything was sort of put in front of me. I knew exactly where I was every single second of the day. And if you were in conflict, there were certain ways to behave. You had a yellow card and a blue card, which was your rules of engagement, so you knew exactly when you were supposed to open fire and when not to, and when to sleep and when not to sleep. So it's about structure for me. It's about having that understanding of structure.